On the 17th of January, 2011, a woman named Anna Hauser ordered a Wiener Melange at a small cafe on the Graben in Vienna's first district, a routine she had maintained 3 times a week for the past 7 months. To any observer, she was the epitome of a rising star in the city's ferociously competitive private banking sector, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, her gaze alternating between the financial data streaming on her tablet and the Baroque architecture across the square. She was an analyst at Creditanstalt Privé, a boutique institution known for its discretion and its ultra-high net worth clientele. This meticulously constructed identity, however, was a sophisticated fiction, a legend so deeply embedded in fabricated records and practiced behaviors that it had become a second skin. Anna Hauser did not exist. The woman occupying her life was an operative of a national intelligence service, and her true purpose in Vienna was not to analyze market trends, but to dismantle one of the most complex and dangerous terror financing networks ever identified on European soil. Her presence in the cafe was not for leisure. It was a calibrated part of her cover, a performance of normalcy that masked a mission of extraordinary risk and consequence. The strategic problem facing the operative service was a hydra-headed financial entity that had proven impervious to conventional intelligence methodologies. For 2 years, a network funneled immense sums of money from a state sponsor to disparate extremist cells across the continent, funding everything from weapons procurement to safe house rentals and propaganda efforts. Signals Intelligence, or SIGINT, could intercept transaction data, but the network's architects were masters of obfuscation, routing funds through a dizzying labyrinth of shell corporations registered in non-cooperative jurisdictions, layering transactions through cryptocurrency tumblers, and utilizing Hawala-style informal value transfer systems that left no electronic footprint. The sheer volume of data was overwhelming, and by the time analysts could connect a suspicious transfer to a potential threat, the money was gone, already converted into operational assets. Human intelligence, or HUMANT, had fared no better. Attempts to penetrate the network at its lower levels had resulted in compromised assets and dead ends. The cell structure was so compartmentalized that foot soldiers and facilitators had no knowledge of the financial architecture that supported them. The core of the network, the brain that directed the flow of capital, was a black box. The escalation of the threat became undeniable after a foiled plot in Brussels, where captured plotters revealed plans for a coordinated, multi-city assault, plans that were contingent on a massive tranche of funding scheduled for imminent release. The existing methods were failing, and the intelligence community faced the chilling realization that they were blind to the network's most critical vulnerability, its central nervous system, which they correctly surmised was not a clandestine cave or a hidden compound, but a gleaming office tower in a European financial capital. The stakes were no longer theoretical. They were measured in the potential for mass casualties and the destabilization of public order. The architect of this financial labyrinth was a man named Alistair Finch, a name that surfaced only in the deepest, most highly classified annexes of intelligence reports. Finch was a ghost, a former prodigy of the London investment banking world who had, for reasons still debated by profilers, turned his back on a life of immense wealth and prestige to serve the ideological aims of a hostile state. His psychological profile was a complex tapestry of disillusionment, intellectual arrogance, and a nihilistic conviction that the Western financial system was a corrupt edifice that he alone had the genius to exploit. He was not a frontline commander but a logistical mastermind, a man who weaponized derivatives, futures contracts, and dark pools of liquidity with the same lethal precision that another man might use a rifle. He understood the intricate legal frameworks of international banking not as constraints, but as a series of loopholes to be systematically exploited. Finch himself never touched the money. He operated through a series of cutouts and proxies, communicating through encrypted channels and using tradecraft that blended the archaic with the futuristic. His primary operational environment was Vienna, a city whose history as a crossroads of empires had imbued its banking sector with a legendary commitment to client privacy, a commitment enshrined in laws that made it a haven for those wishing to hide their financial activities. Finch was not just a target, he was a challenge to the entire intelligence paradigm, a man who had created a system so resilient and opaque that it functioned like a law of nature, invisible and omnipresent. Profilers assessed that his paranoia was his greatest defense. He trusted no one, maintained no permanent residence, and his digital footprint was so meticulously scrubbed that he was, for all intents and purposes, a phantom in the machine. The solution proposed by a small, highly specialized unit within the service was as audacious as it was unorthodox. Codenamed Operation Cascade, the plan rejected the principles of remote surveillance and peripheral penetration that had thus far failed. It was predicated on a single, high-risk gambit to insert a deep-cover operative not just into Vienna's financial world, but into the specific, hand-picked institution believed to be the network's primary hub, Crédit Installed Privé. The objective was not merely to gather intelligence on a specific transaction, but to become a trusted, integral component of the bank's internal machinery. The operative would need to gain access to the core systems, understand the institutional culture, and identify the human nodes within the bank that Finch was using to execute his strategy. The ultimate goal was to map the entire network from its central point, identify the kill switches, and dismantle the pipeline in a single, synchronized blow. This was an intelligence mission disguised as a career in high finance, a long con of unprecedented complexity. The obstacles were formidable. Crédit Installed Privé's vetting process for employees was legendary, involving forensic audits of an applicant's entire life history. The professional demands would be immense. The operative would have to perform the duties of a high-pressure financial analyst flawlessly, as any hint of incompetence or distraction would draw immediate suspicion. The linguistic and cultural barriers were significant, requiring not just fluency in German but a deep understanding of the subtle social codes of the Austrian elite. The psychological strain of maintaining this dual reality, of living a lie 24 hours a day under constant scrutiny, would be crushing. The consequences of failure were absolute. The certain death of the operative, the complete compromise of the service's methods against this type of target, and a catastrophic diplomatic incident with Austria. The individual selected for this undertaking was a 34-year-old woman whose service file designated her as Elara. Her recruitment had been unconventional. She was not a product of the military or traditional intelligence pipelines, but had been headhunted from the National Revenue Service's Forensic Accounting Division. There, she had earned a quiet reputation for her almost preternatural ability to perceive patterns and anomalies within vast, chaotic datasets, a skill rooted in a rare form of eidetic memory specific to numerical sequences. Her psychological profile revealed a personality of immense resilience, discipline, and a capacity for compartmentalization that was off the charts. Her motivation was deeply personal, a cold, controlled grief born from losing her brother in a terrorist attack years earlier. An attack that later intelligence suggested was funded by a precursor to Finch's current network. Her transformation from civil servant to deep cover operative was a grueling 18-month process conducted in total isolation at a secure training facility. The curriculum was twofold. First, her already formidable financial knowledge was weaponized. She was tutored by a team of former hedge fund managers and banking compliance officers, immersing her in the esoteric world of structured financial products, offshore special purpose vehicles, and the specific regulatory environment of Austrian banking law. She learned to think, speak, and act, not just like an analyst, but like a top-tier performer in that world. Second, she underwent an intensive course in classical tradecraft, advanced counter-surveillance detection routes, dead drop and brush pass techniques, the use of micro-communications devices, and, most critically, resistance to interrogation training. The psychological conditioning was relentless, designed to fracture and then rebuild her identity around the core of the mission, insulating her from the emotional toll of the impending deception. The construction of her cover identity, Anna Hauser, was an exercise in meticulous detail, a masterpiece of fabrication that spanned continents and government databases. The legend began with a foundation of verifiable, if misleading, truth. The name itself was chosen for its commonality in Switzerland and Austria, making it blend seamlessly into the background. A Swiss nationality was selected because of the country's reputation for producing skilled finance professionals and its own stringent privacy laws, which would complicate any unsanctioned background checks. The service's assets within the Zurich Civil Registry created a birth certificate, while counterparts in the education sector fabricated a full academic history at the London School of Economics. complete with transcripts, a dissertation on emerging market derivatives, and glowing letters of recommendation from professors who were, in reality, intelligence officers. Her employment history was a carefully crafted narrative of success at a boutique investment firm in Geneva. The firm was real, but it had been deliberately chosen because it had gone bankrupt and dissolved 2 years prior, making a thorough vetting of her role there nearly impossible. Its closure provided the perfect, logical reason for Anna to be seeking new opportunities in Vienna. The digital life of Anna Hauser was built backwards, with social media profiles populated with years of backdated content. Photos from fabricated ski trips to Zermatt, check-ins at London pubs, and anodyne comments on the posts of a small network of friends, who were themselves assets playing a supporting role. Her physical presence in Vienna was established 6 months before she would even apply for the job. An apartment was leased in the upscale Josefstadt district, and a team established her pattern of life. They shopped at the local markets, established accounts at a nearby bank, joined a gym, and subscribed to the Vienna State Opera, all in the name of Anna Hauser. Every detail, from the brand of coffee she supposedly preferred to the worn copy of a Thomas Mann novel on her nightstand, was a carefully placed tile in an elaborate mosaic of deception, designed to withstand the most invasive scrutiny. The technology developed for Operation Cascade was designed to be as subtle and integrated as the operative's cover story. The core principle was to avoid any piece of equipment that screamed espionage. Her primary tool was a state-of-the-art laptop, a commercially available model that had been stripped and rebuilt by the service's technical branch. Its hard drive was partitioned into 3 layers. The first was a standard operating system populated with financial modeling software, market data feeds, and personal files that reinforced her legend. The second, accessible only through a non-obvious boot sequence and a complex password protocol, contained her operational tools. The third partition was a canary trap, a dummy layer containing plausible but ultimately useless intelligence, designed to be discovered under duress to satisfy her captors and end the interrogation. Her communications suite was a marvel of covert engineering. It consisted of a software-defined radio capable of sending encrypted burst transmissions of data in milliseconds. This software was embedded within a legitimate financial data subscription service. Her transmissions were disguised as routine data packet requests to the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, making them virtually invisible to network monitoring unless one knew exactly what signature to look for. Physical surveillance tools were embedded in her personal effects. The nib of her favorite Mont Blanc fountain pen contained a high-resolution camera, activated by a specific sequence of twists. A pair of reading glasses she wore was fitted with a similar device in the bridge, while the frame itself contained a directional microphone. The most critical piece of technology, however, was the payload she was tasked to deliver, a piece of custom malware codenamed Pathfinder. It was not a destructive virus or a data theft tool. Instead, Pathfinder was a logic worm, an analytical engine designed to be covertly installed on the bank's central server. Once active, it would not exfiltrate raw data, which would risk triggering security alarms. Instead, it would silently analyze the flow of transactions in real time, using a complex algorithm to identify patterns consistent with Finch's known financial signatures. It would map the relationships between accounts, trace the layering of funds, and identify the ultimate destination accounts, creating a complete, dynamic blueprint of the entire network architecture. Anna Hauser's insertion into Credit Installed Privé began with a formal application for a mid-level position in their derivatives and structured products division. The application itself was a work of art. Her fabricated resume and cover letter, honed by a team of financial industry experts and psychologists to strike the perfect balance of ambition, expertise, and deference to the bank's conservative culture. The subsequent vetting process was as invasive as predicted. It involved a multi-stage interview marathon with department heads, senior partners, and the bank's notoriously thorough head of security. They scrutinized her academic record, with calls being placed to the professors at the London School of Economics, who were waiting to provide sterling, pre-scripted references. They delved into her work at the defunct Geneva firm, a process her handlers had prepared for by creating a fictional former supervisor, now retired in Argentina, and reachable only via a secure email address monitored by the service. She underwent psychometric and aptitude tests, which she had been coached to pass with a score that was impressive, but not so perfect as to arouse suspicion. Her legend held. After 3 months of grueling evaluation, Anna Hauser was offered the position. The first phase of the operation inside the bank was a slow, painstaking process of assimilation. She focused entirely on her official role, working punishing hours, arriving early, and staying later than any of her colleagues. Her work was flawless. Her market analyses were insightful. Her reports meticulously detailed. She projected an aura of quiet competence and unwavering dedication, deliberately avoiding office politics and cultivating an image as a reliable, if somewhat reserved, workhorse. This period was a calculated investment in building trust and professional capital. She needed to become not just a part of the team, but a load-bearing pillar, an employee so valuable and integrated that her presence in sensitive meetings and her access to proprietary systems would become a matter of course, not a matter of privilege. Over the next 6 months, Anna methodically worked her way deeper into the bank's inner sanctum. Her performance earned her a reputation for excellence, but she knew that competence alone was not enough to get her close to the operational core of Finch's network. Through careful observation of the bank's social and power dynamics, she identified the critical human node she needed to access: Marcus Thorne, a senior portfolio manager in his late 50s. Thorne was a creature of the old school, a veteran of the bank who commanded immense respect and was entrusted with the institution's most sensitive and lucrative accounts. He was also, according to the service's background analysis, the likely gatekeeper for Finch's activities within the bank, not necessarily a willing co-conspirator, but a man whose position and perhaps cultivated blindness made him the perfect tool. The build-up to engaging Thorne was a campaign of subtle, indirect influence. Anna began producing analytical reports on niche market areas that she knew were of particular interest to him, leaving copies on the communal printer where he would be sure to see them. In team meetings, she would defer to his experience, but then offer a piece of data or an observation that subtly complemented and reinforced his own market positions. She never challenged him directly, but positioned herself as a valuable intellectual resource. She learned his routines, his preferred coffee, the name of his dog. The breakthrough came during a volatile market period when a complex derivatives position in one of Thorne's portfolios was at risk. Anna, having anticipated the market shift, had already prepared a detailed hedging strategy. She presented it to him not as a correction of his oversight, but as a set of preliminary thoughts she had been working on. Thorne, impressed by her foresight and diligence, implemented the strategy, which saved his client a significant amount of money. From that moment, a mentorship began to form. He started actively seeking her input, inviting her to client meetings, and eventually granting her deputy-level access to his portfolio management system, ostensibly so she could assist him with his workload. The psychological pressure during this phase was immense. She was manipulating a man who, by all accounts, was simply a dedicated professional, leveraging his trust as a weapon. Every conversation, every shared coffee, was a calculated move in a game whose stakes he was completely unaware of. She was drawing closer to the network's heart, but the ethical and emotional cost of her deception mounted with each passing day. The trigger for the operation's climax came not from within the bank, but from a fragmented SIGINT intercept that indicated a massive capital transfer was being prepared. Analysts cross-referenced the data with other intelligence streams and concluded with high confidence that this was the funding tranche for the planned multi-city attacks. They estimated Anna had a window of less than 72 hours. The final phase of the operation was set in motion. That evening, as the rest of the office emptied out, Anna stayed late, as did Thorne, both working to close out positions before the Asian markets opened. This was the moment she had been preparing for since her arrival. Citing a critical software error on her own terminal that was preventing her from finalizing a time-sensitive trade report for him, she employed a carefully rehearsed social engineering script. She feigned frustration and helplessness, a stark contrast to her usual unflappable competence, a psychological ploy designed to elicit his instinct to help. She explained that the only way to meet the deadline was if she could quickly use his terminal, which had higher-level permissions, to run the final calculation. Thorne, stressed and eager to finish for the night, readily agreed, logging into his workstation and then turning to take a phone call. In that brief window, with his back turned, Anna's fingers moved with practiced speed. She inserted a small, innocuous-looking USB flash drive disguised as a personal keychain into a port on the back of the machine. The drive auto-ran the Pathfinder logic worm. The installation took less than 4 seconds. She then ran a legitimate diagnostic on the financial software, a plausible action that masked the malware's deployment. For the next 10 minutes, an eternity in operational time, she engaged Thorne in conversation about market volatility, her mind racing while her demeanor remained calm and professional. All the while, Pathfinder was silently at work, mapping the labyrinthine pathways of Finch's network as the final transfer was being staged. It identified the originating accounts in a Middle Eastern state bank, traced the funds through 3 shell corporations in the Cayman Islands and Cyprus, and pinpointed the final beneficiary accounts distributed across a dozen smaller European banks. It also located the fail-safe accounts designed to receive and then erase the funds if the network was compromised. The entire architecture, the product of years of Finch's malevolent genius, was laid bare. As the program completed its work, it bundled the data and piggybacked it onto a scheduled outbound data stream of market analytics to a Frankfurt clearinghouse. The exfiltration was complete. Her primary mission was over. The extraction protocol was immediate and absolute. There was no room for sentiment or hesitation. After confirming the data packet had been received by her handlers, Anna finished her report, thanked a still oblivious Thorne for his help, and packed her briefcase. She walked out of the gleaming doors of Creditanstalt Privé for the last time, just another employee heading home after a long day. But instead of turning towards her apartment in Josefstadt, she began a pre-planned exfiltration route. Her first stop was a public restroom in the Stephansplatz U-Bahn station. Inside a stall, she stripped off the clothes of Anna Hauser, the tailored suit and expensive shoes, and changed into the anonymous attire of a tourist: jeans, a simple jacket, and comfortable walking shoes. The clothes, along with Anna's wallet, keys, and employee ID, were placed in a weighted dry bag. Her next stop was the Reichsbrücke Bridge over the Danube. In a fluid, practiced motion, she dropped the bag over the side, watching for a moment as the life of Anna Hauser sank without a trace into the dark, cold water. She then proceeded to the Wien Hauptbahnhof, the city's main train station. Using a key she had been carrying for months, she opened a luggage locker. Inside was a backpack containing a different passport, a Canadian one, under the name of Sarah Kingston, along with a new phone, cash in 3 currencies, and a train ticket to Prague. She scrubbed her face of makeup in the station's washroom, altered her hair, and emerged as a different person. She boarded the overnight train, took her seat in a quiet carriage, and as the lights of Vienna receded into the darkness, she methodically disassembled the microcamera from her fountain pen and crushed it under her heel. The operative, known as Alara, was gone. The woman who was once Anna Hauser had ceased to exist. Only Sarah Kingston remained, a ghost on a train, heading east. The consequences of Operation Cascade were swift and devastating for Finch's network. Armed with the precise, actionable intelligence from the Pathfinder worm, the service coordinated with partner agencies across 6 European countries. In a series of synchronized raids and legal maneuvers conducted in the pre-dawn hours, authorities froze over 40 bank accounts simultaneously. The massive funding transfer, the lifeblood for the impending attacks, was stopped in its tracks. Deprived of funds, the operational cells were thrown into disarray, their logistics collapsing. The subsequent arrests of key facilitators and foot soldiers effectively decapitated the network's operational arm on the continent. At Creditanstalt Privé, the fallout was catastrophic. The discovery of the bank's role, however unwitting, as a central hub for terror financing triggered a massive scandal. Marcus Thorne was fired immediately and faced a lengthy investigation that, while ultimately clearing him of criminal complicity, destroyed his career and reputation. The bank itself was hit with crippling fines and regulatory sanctions, its name forever tarnished. Alistair Finch was never apprehended. He vanished as the network collapsed, his phantom-like existence allowing him to slip through the closing dragnet. However, his financial architecture was shattered, his credibility with his state sponsors was ruined, and his effectiveness as a logistical mastermind was permanently neutralized. For the operative, the return was a disorienting process of psychological decompression. Elara underwent weeks of debriefing in a secure facility, recounting every detail of her time as Anna Hauser. The mission was hailed as a resounding success, a textbook example of deep-cover intelligence work. But the psychological cost was profound. The persona of Anna Hauser, which she had inhabited so completely for nearly 2 years, could not be shed as easily as a suit. The relationships she had built, particularly the mentorship with Thorne, were based on a fundamental deception that left a scar. She had lived a lie to serve a greater truth, but the moral lines had become irrevocably blurred. She was given a new identity, a quiet, non-operational role in analysis, far from the field. The operation had saved countless lives, but it had also consumed a part of her that could never be recovered, leaving behind the quiet, reflective knowledge that in the fight against monsters, it is sometimes necessary to become a phantom oneself. What is the true measure of a successful intelligence operation? Is it the prevention of an attack, or does the moral cost of the methods employed diminish the victory? When an operative must completely subsume their identity to deceive and manipulate, where does the mission end and the individual begin? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel.